Microcampus is a program which allows 8th graders from Shanghai American School to travel to Southwest China for 28 days to learn about the culture and the people outside the Shanghai bubble. I was fortunate enough to be chosen to be a part of the Wildfires group, and I got the chance to call Xizhou my home for a month along with 15 other students. One of the main projects we worked on before and during the trip was our inquiry projects. I chose the topic of body language through people watching. Throughout my time in Xizhou, my focus slowly shifted to the differences in the actions between tourists and citizens. I also became curious and aware of the differences held inside the two groups. To understand the perceptions of the people of Xizhou, one might consider the perspectives of a long-term citizen, the perspective of a short-term tourist, and a perspective of a short-term scholar. Due to the size of the village, the citizens make up a tightly knit community. One of the citizens that I talked to during the first week was Miss Zhao, who sells marinated vegetables in the morning market. Miss Zhao was one of the few people that explained in depth the differences between the citizens and tourists of the area, saying that the citizens have to work harder than the tourists. She talked about how the tourists come to enjoy life and how the citizens are here to live their lives. I also spoke to Miss Li, Mr. Yang, Mr. Zhu, and many other citizens who echo the points made by Miss Zhao, saying that the majority of the tourists have good habits, but there are also tourists who do not have manners. However, they all notice that the tourists rarely interact with them. They believe that the etiquette of the citizens is higher compared to the tourists. Miss Li mentioned that the tourists caught the citizens through filler words. For example, and conversations, I realized that the citizens were not willing to say a lot, since they did not want to tell me the adverse actions the tourists were taking. I believe that the main reason was that the tourists were around and the citizens felt pressured in some way. Noticing how the citizens were acting when the tourists were around left a powerful impact on me. It made me reflect on how the tourists made the citizens feel powerless and smaller than them, which was evident by the body language of the tourists. Many of the citizens also noticed that the tourists wear their backpacks in front, although they are not sure why. Tourism is one of the most significant driving factors of the Xizhou economy, and the tourists usually gather in a few places. Looking into the perspectives of the tourists, I met Sean outside a coffee shop near the canola fields. It was Sean's 4th time in Xizhou, and he came to China in 2008. Sean talked about how during his visits, he noticed that the tourists would usually be on their devices other than conversing with each other, or taking photos through their phones and cameras. Like many other tourists, before his arrival, he thought that the people in Xizhou were impoverished and less educated. Sean noticed that the tourists wander around while citizens walk with a purpose and use eye contact as a form of respect. Apple is a tourist from Nanjing I met at the corner of Sifangjie who came to Xizhou with her friend. She did not have many assumptions about Xizhou before coming, like other tourists that travel in large groups. Although not having many assumptions, Apple noticed many differences between the tourists and citizens. She talked about how the tourists always show open body language, but citizens usually show closed body language unless someone is interested in buying their products. The best part of our conversation was when she asked Mr. Yang, who is from Xizhou and was my teacher support for the day, other places to go to learn more about the culture of the village. That showed me that there are tourists that go to places beyond the purpose of a photo, flower crowns, and hair braids. During this process, I saw myself people watch, and as each day passed, my role changed. In the first few days, I felt like a tourist and could not see many differences between the two groups. 28 days later, I am aware that I am neither a tourist nor a citizen. Like the other 15 students, I am in between. I understand how to dress respectfully, greet people with eye contact, and know the place well enough to walk with a purpose. The citizens know I am not one of them. However, some tourists would come up to me and ask for directions. The most impactful part of my project was during Phase 3 work. Apple and her friend were not as open when I first saw them. When I addressed them, they looked up with looks of disgust and moved closer to each other as if I was dangerous and they needed to protect each other from me. However, when I kept talking and introduced myself as a student traveling internationally, they immediately tucked away their phones, became very interested in my learnings, and started to share a lot of information with me. That is when I was really able to understand how a few actions could be so disrespectful to a community. It was apparent that the friends wanted to protect each other since they thought I was a citizen at first. After looking into the perspectives of citizens, perspectives of tourists, and the perspective of myself, I understand the perceptions that are held about Xizhou. The most important part of this project was not to learn about the differences between the citizens and tourists, but to learn about myself. This project has helped me grow as a leader. I am now able to go up to strangers and get my point across, even when they do not look interested at first. I am so grateful to be able to be a part of this once-in-a-lifetime adventure, and I will never forget all the smiles and tears that we as a group have been through. Microcampus will always stay in a special place in my heart.